No, not
think
yet.
Okay, I didn't think so. I'll introduce you, and I'm going to do my best to stay on as long as I can. But if you could monitor your Q&A as well, just because there's
Sure.
other sessions going on that I have to jump on and off for.
Sure,
but I
no
wanted to
problem.
at least get on to introduce you because you're like my favorite person in the world.
Thanks.
I love seeing you. How are things going?
Good. Yeah, how was the week? Did you have good participation?
Oh yeah, it's been amazing.
Oh,
Amazing. I think today, I don't know how many people you'll have on. The first sessions have been, some had 40 to 50, some only had a few, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it's Saturday. So
Yeah.
people will come on but I think a lot of people will watch it later as well.
Yeah.
So
okay.
yeah, I think it'll be good. I did push really, really hard in our adult Facebook groups this morning for you to get you guys for people to tune in. So
and in my sessions, I told people about it.
Okay.
Each of the days. Yeah.
Perfect.
Amanda, we are live now.
Okay, everybody, we are live. Welcome to this amazing session. We're so excited to have you guys on today. One of my most favorite people in the world. Can you tell I've been doing a conference all week? I'm tired. Is here with us today, but before I introduce her and let her get started, I just want to thank you all for being here. I hope you've enjoyed this week. So we still have some great sessions this afternoon, so don't forget to join us. Also, I have to remind everyone we're in a campaign right now to really push to get the $50,000 that we're trying to get, and all you have to do is give feedback. So you just need to text ASF to 90412. Help us get to that mark. We are so close. So throughout this session, if you have questions, this is all about you and all about Q&A. So if you have questions, make sure that you're putting it in the chat box. And I'm looking, and I'm not sure I see a Q&A box, which I thought we would have. Maybe someone can help with that.
Hi, this is Lisa.
Yeah, I'm going to see what I can do on that.
Okay, thank you. So you can either put questions in the chat box or you can put questions in the Q&A box once it pops up. But we have an amazing individual with us today, and I see a lot of people are starting to join, so I'm so glad that you guys are here. Anne Ehlert is here with us from Protected Tomorrows. If you didn't get a chance to watch all of her videos she created for us ahead of time, don't be alarmed. They'll still be available for you to watch. And so we're so thankful that you're able to be here with us today, Anne. So I'm gonna pass it on. She's a wealth of knowledge, and the whole goal of today is to get your questions answered. So make sure you get those questions out there. So Anne, take it away.
Hey, thanks. Have fun at the rest of your sessions, Amanda. I'm sure that you've had a busy week.
Thank you.
Okay, so we covered a lot of things. Actually, see some familiar names out there. We covered a lot of topics this week: benefits, legal, general planning, all the things you need to do, the ABLE account. So I am open to answering any questions that anybody has, and I'm going to just go through. I see the chat box. Okay, so some people are going to ask me some very specific questions, and if you do, I am going to give you my email address so that I can answer them directly, because I won't have access to some of that data. But so the first question was from Lisa. She lives in Central California. Can you recommend some lawyers near my location? So there are several really great special needs attorneys in California. I don't have all of them with me right at this moment, but if you email me to mehlert@protectedtomorrows.com, I will tell you again, just in case anybody else needs it. It's mehlert, EHLERT, @protectedtomorrows.com. And I have about 3 attorneys in Central California who do special needs work, and they're really, really excellent. So just email me. Okay. Can you tell us a little about ABLE accounts and when we should start it? Okay, so I will do a quick brief. There's a whole session on ABLE, but I will give you a quick brief view of them. So ABLEs are a new type of savings program, similar to a college savings program. So if you ever used a 529 for college, it is a kickoff from that legislation. And ABLE accounts allow us to save for a person with a disability. So I'll give you the brief rules, okay? This was federal legislation. And after the federal legislation passed, it went out into the states. So each state decided if they were going to offer this to families. Some states offer it to anyone, even in people in other states. Some states only offer it to their local state residents, and some states don't have it at all. So I can tell you some examples is that, some have lots of that. So let's see, I'm going to just close off a box I have here. So basically, let me just close my participants box. I'm afraid to do that. So what happens with the ABLE is, we're allowed to have only $2,000 in our child's name and have them get SSI and Medicaid. But with the ABLE account, it allows us to save more than that. And it depends upon the state how much you can put in that. So the ABLE is a tax-free savings program. It allows you to save for your child tax-free. If you have more than 100,000, there's two downsides to it. One is if there's more than 100,000, your child's SSI could be suspended, not canceled, suspended, but SSI only. And if your child were to pass away, the money in the account could have a reimbursement for Medicaid spent from the time the account was opened. So I hope that's helpful, but there's a whole class on it, lots of rules. It's a great tool when you're thinking about, how much money does my child have in their name, and are we getting close to the 2,000? Okay. All right. Another question. When should we start a special needs trust? Is it too late or too early? Never too late and never too early. That's my answer. So a special needs trust is the place you're going to leave assets upon your death for your child's future. Now, I'm going to get into a little bit about SSI, how do all these play into SSI and Medicaid and SSDI and DAC and all those programs that we talked about in the Retiring for 3 session. But the Special Needs Trust is there to receive an inheritance you might want to leave for your child, which if you're planning for them and you just say, okay, this is the dollars they're going to need, you're going to decide how much you leave because you cannot leave your child directly assets. So should you set it up later? Well, the answer to that is, when are you going to die? And since we don't know that, I would say when you're doing your estate planning, as soon as you do it, and you should do it soon, that's when you should do it. Sometimes people say, well, my child's not 18 yet, and I really, they're not getting benefits yet. Well, the problem with not doing it soon is that if you pass away early, your child will receive the inheritance via just default. Even if you have no will, they'll get access to some money. And once it's in their name, you can't undo it, right? It's theirs. And then you'd have to create this other kind of special needs trust that has payback to the government. So a special needs trust is a critical document. People say, well, you know what? Nothing's going to happen. So we'll tell you, this week I got a call from a business partner who wanted to learn because she knew she had a family member with special needs. And so she called me up and said, oh, I waited too long. I need help. Her sister has a child with special needs, and her sister's husband died of a heart attack at age 42. So now we're hustling around trying to get things done, make sure that nothing falls through the crack from the sister to the child. And so it's never too soon. All right. Next question is SSI help. Okay, so SSI seems really complicated, right? SSI, Supplemental Security Income, is a program because most of our children, when they're under 18, are not going to get this if mom and dad are working. Okay, so the rules that apply to your child getting SSI are this: they can have a house. We have to prove they have a disability that's going to stop them from making $13.10 a month. That's the easy part, giving a diagnosis and getting doctors to say that's their limitation. Okay. The complicated part is understanding what this SSI is all about. It's a check. Okay. And it's a check when your child turns 18, the month after they're 18. So we have to be able to prove your child has a disability, and we have to prove that your child doesn't have more than a house, a car, if they can drive, a prepaid funeral, $2,000, and an ABLE account. So that's where the ABLE account fits in, because it can have more than the $2,000 as long as it's in that ABLE account. Okay, so when you first apply for Social Security for your child when they're 18, so let's say your child's birthday is April 23rd, you cannot apply till May 1st. Why was that? Because in April, sometime in April, they were 17. And if they're 17, they are going to ask who has money, and they're going to look at mom and dad's, because when your child's under 18, they can count mom and dad's. So if you have more than a house, car, prepaid funeral, $2,000, or any of those assets, your child, all that's going to count against them. So we should not apply until the month after your child's 18, unless they're born on the first of the month. And SSI is a check. Okay, that's what it is. And so the amount right now is $794. Okay, so somebody's out there saying, well, I'm not getting $794, I'm getting $435 or something like that. So again, SSI is to bring your child up to $794. If they have other income from any source, that could count against the child. So let's say your child receives some, and it depends upon its earned income or unearned income, but either of those assets will count against it. So let's say they had a trust that somebody set up for them at some point, and it requires $100 a month to come out to your child. That $100 a month will count as income to your child, so they won't get the $794, they will get less than that. Another reason they get less than $794 is that they're living with you. So if the child's living with you, and that's how you answer the question when you get asked that question, where's my child living? You say at home. The government will come back and say, well, you know what? You are providing your child a source of income by letting them live free in your house. These are all just crazy rules, but you need to know them. So the one thing you'll hear me say a lot is, as a parent, and I'm a parent, those of you know me, of a child with special needs, and a sister of a person with special needs in my past, one thing we do know is that the rules are crazy and we have to know them. And we as parents always need to be the advocate. So the SSI, this rule about if your child's living at home with you, you are providing them income. And this is a way to think about it. If a person knocked on your door and you said, oh yeah, come on in, live in my house for free, you are providing them income. And so that's exactly how they look at it. If you let your child who's 18 live in your home, you're providing them income. So how do you answer that question when Social Security asks you that question? Basically, you say, you know what, my child's living in my home in a separate household, and they're paying me room and board. Okay. Therefore, your child is not getting something free from you. And when you get the benefit, you will be able to take that benefit and pay yourself room and board. Okay, there's a lot of rules around that, but I know we have a lot of questions, so I want to make sure that that's clear. If there's other questions about SSI, please enter them. I just gave you a quick overview. I go through a lot of that in one of the sessions, so I'm happy to answer all those questions here too, though. Okay. All right, so that SSI help was a big help exclamation point. So if I didn't answer the question, this is what I will say about SSI. It's one step at a time. Okay. So make sure you have your child's doctors and medical information available. If you don't think that's going to prove enough of your case, make sure that you get IEPs available. Make sure that you have people within the school system that can support it and perhaps write letters. Okay. So you have to prove that. They're looking for, this is the other thing as a parent. Your child's not going to apply by themselves. You're going to help them. If they are now they're 18. So do you have the right to do your child's application? Sure you do, but you are going to act in the capacity of a guardian versus a parent, because as a parent, you really don't have those authorities. As a guardian, you do. So what if you're not guardian yet and you want to apply for SSI? So how you do that is you have your child sign a form to make you the representative, authorized representative. You know, you're saying, Mom, my child can't sign their name. They won't know they're signing. That's okay. There's a form, you check, you have your child X that they're giving you the authority to do it. So you can do all this on behalf of your child. You can also have other people do it for you, but don't be intimidated by it. So a lot of times we get intimidated by IRS, right? Or we don't want to talk to, there's just government officials that just intimidate us. And there you'll also find local people, because you're doing this, you can do it all online, and then you'll have a phone appointment. Just know the rules. Don't be intimidated. And so this is the other caution. When you submit the SSI application, you're not really submitting an SSI application. You're submitting a disability application, right? So when you submit the original application, the very first thing you're going to get is a decline letter, right? So when you get that decline letter, it is not for SSI, it is for SSDI, so Social Security Disability. So remember, there's two programs. There's one program that you work for, and there's one program that you get because you need it. The first thing they look for when you submit that application is this person eligible, and do they have enough work record to get disability? That's the first thing they're looking for. So if your child hasn't worked, which they probably haven't, they will come back and do a decline. You don't have to do anything. All they've done is send you the decline letter for SSDI, and they continue to process it for SSI. The other thing you need to know about this is you need to be diligent and call them and say, where's my case? If you don't hear, don't let it sit for 2 years. Sometimes if you have a third-party special needs trust, they will ask you for a copy of the trust. If the trust is a good trust, it's not going to be a problem, but it takes a delay. So you're hoping, you can say it's an unfunded, if you have no money and you just created it for death, it'll be an unfunded special needs trust, and therefore will have nothing in it. All right. So you can just say, I have a special needs trust, third-party special needs trust. There is nothing in it, and hopefully they won't want to see it. If they want to see it, sometime that delays your case. They're going to take that trust. They're going to send it off to their attorneys. I've seen these cases last months and months and months when they do that. As long as you have worked with a great special needs attorney, and if there's ever a question about that trust, that attorney will speak on your behalf as to any questions they have. All right. So those are the things that typically might happen that might delay your case. But I will tell you, in the last year, I've seen people submit their application. The offices, just like a lot of companies, are slower performing than they typically would. And the Social Security offices are pretty slow sometimes, now that they've lost a lot of their really great people who can do some things. So if it's taking a long time, call, okay? Or go to the office if you have to, if they're open. I had somebody who submitted an application this year, and they just lost paperwork. So they said, oh, well, we don't have it here anywhere. And so we kept bugging them, and finally we got it. And then they hurried it through because they realized it was their mistake. So diligence on this process. Get help if you're not sure, okay? There's people out there who can help you walk through the process. Now, attorneys typically won't take an SSI case. Why? When they're going for SSDI, attorneys get paid on the approval, okay? So SSI, it's not a big enough number typically. So what they'll tell you to do is go get SSI and you get declined, then they'll help you, okay? Because then they know it's going to be a long time before the approval takes place. But you can do it. You can do it. So it's not that complicated, one step at a time. Okay. We do have on our website some free little tutorials on just step-by-step if you want to use those. But it's not that hard. Just know, you know what you need to do. Okay, next question is about guardianship. This has me really stressed out. Can you give me some tips? Okay, so what are we doing when we file for guardianship? What are we actually doing? Because when your child turns 18, when anybody is 18, we are still their parent, right? But we are not their legal guardian. We are their legal guardian until they're 18. And when they're 18, they have their own voice. They have the right to make their own decisions, both financially and medically. So be pre-guardianship. People say, do I really have to do this? So the steps of guardianship are: 1, determine if you must do guardianship. If your child doesn't have the capacity to make decisions about their own well-being, about financials, things like that, which is typical, then you need to do guardianship. Some people say, I'm not sure. Maybe my child can make these kind of decisions, or I've taught them about something. Can they make those decisions? Typically not. But if you feel they can, And says, what are we doing with guardianship? We're taking our child's rights away. That's what we're doing. And so if we feel that they could have do some of this, the next step before guardianship is powers of attorney. Can your child sign a piece of paper, or could they sign a piece of paper giving you some rights? In this situation, probably not, but that's the first step you consider. The next step is guardianship. Now, how do you do guardianship? Should you do it alone? Should you, can you do it, or do you need an attorney to do it? How complicated do you think your case is going to be? I would say in most situations here, I would think you could do it. It's a filing with the county. So you are going to get a piece of paper. You can go on your county's website, find the guardianship forms, find the doctor's form. So that's within 90 days of filing the guardianship, you're going to have a doctor fill out a record that says, yes, the child needs a guardian. That's the first step. Can you do this way in advance of your child's 18th birthday? No, because under 18, why would you be doing it at 17 years? Somebody called me the other day and she was really stressed out about guardianship and she was starting to think about it. I said, well, how's your child? She said 14. I said, you're the guardian, right? It's 18 is that age which the person is the age of majority, and we need to go to court. So we're asking the judge to make us responsible. Okay? So don't let this stress you out. Okay. These judges who do this do it all the time. As long as you have the doctor backing you up and medical records backing you up, it's going to be a pretty simple process. You might have to wait in line for the appointment. So go online. If you're thinking about and a time is coming up, go online, get the forms, look at them. Okay. If you're not sure about how to fill them out. The other thing, I know some big cities, like I'm outside Chicago, the Cook County, which is the biggest county in Chicago, in the whole, Chicago area, has a desk where they will hold your hand through the process, right? I'm sure there's other parents here who have done it before who you could call and say, okay, I did it. What's this look like? We have people in our office will look at that and say, well, you're probably missing this piece or you're missing that piece. But it is really not that hard. There's nothing to stress out about. The process of guardianship. Okay. What does it mean? So good medical record, make sure your doctor is going to support the process, call them in advance, say this, they have done it before, look at the paperwork in advance so you can kind of get a sense of what it's about. Ask another parent who's done it in the county that you're in, so you get some expertise as to the judge. There's usually one or two judges who are going to be assigned to that. If you go, then you fill out this paperwork, they give you a court date, you go to court, the judge asks you some questions, they say, okay, you're guardian. There's a lot of magic as long as you have the medical records. If the judge feels like they don't have enough information to assign you to be the guardian, they will in court assign a guardian ad litem. What's a guardian ad litem? That is a person, typically an attorney, who's in court, who says, you, attorney 1, 2, 3, you're going to be assigned the guardian ad litem for this child. And the guardian ad litem is going to represent your child. They're going to interview and meet your child to make sure that they feel like that person needs a guardian. Why did they go through all this process? Well, we're taking our child's right away. It's a pretty serious process. And so the courts take it seriously. If it's a very clear case, they do it. Okay. You get a guardian certificate and you are the guardian. Once a year, you need to report to the court to say this is a status. Sometimes it's online, sometimes it's a form. Very rarely do people have to go to court to guardianship. You just fill out, this is where my child is. You have pretty much, once you're not doing anything different than you probably are right now, except once a year reporting to the court. Court has given you the responsibility for this adult, and your job is to make sure that they are safe and they are happy. So you're just keeping the job of parent with another title on it. What else do you need to know? So the guardianship is filed in the county that your child lives. So what happens? I'm working with somebody right now, they're in Ohio, families in Ohio, and the child has lived in Ohio all of their life. And we just recently found the perfect residential setting in Wisconsin. Okay. So we have to work through the process of moving, even though the parents, and it's not the parents in this case, it's a brother and sister, are guardians. we have to help them find an attorney in Wisconsin who does guardianship, and they will go have that attorney in Wisconsin move the guardianship to Wisconsin. They can live in Ohio, but they will be the guardians. When you are getting government money, many times some of the funding that comes in for residential requires the guardianship to be in the county where the individual lives. Now, do people who live in Cook County in Chicago and their child's going to move into a residential setting in Lake County go to court and refile the guardianship? I don't see very many people doing that, but especially if the child's coming back and forth to the parent's house, legally they are supposed to. So I would get advice in that situation. Now, I said you could do the guardianship yourself. Many people are intimidated by that whole process. Could you hire an attorney to do that? Sure, you could. And sometimes it's difficult for the child to go into the court process. And so many times people will hire an attorney because the attorney sometimes can get the child's appearance in court waived. Okay. All right. There's other processes. Some counties will serve, many counties will serve paperwork to your child. Child's not going to know typically what's happening. They're going to get some paperwork, give it to them, and then child's going to give it to you. So every state is different, but don't let it stress you out. It's not that bad, really. It's not. Okay. All right. If an adult with AS has Medicare and Medicaid, if the adult can also keep regular good costs, do we need to keep it? Also, is any need for supplemental if you have Medicare and Medicaid? Okay. This is always a really complicated situation, right? So we know when your child, I'm just going to go through the process a little bit. Your child, when they turn 18, is probably, I'm going to assume the parents have health insurance. So the rules about health insurance now is what? Under the ACA plan, Obamacare, whatever we call it, they expanded how long a child can stay on a parent's health insurance. It's age 26. So from 18, when your child's getting their Medicaid until they're 26, they're probably on your health insurance. So when we get them the Medicaid, should we get it if the parents are still on it? I would say yes, because Medicaid isn't just about health insurance. Medicaid is a ticket, and the ticket of Medicaid is paying for health care, but it's also the ticket to get in the door in our state. If you want to get residential funding and you get pulled on this list, if you don't have Medicaid, you can sit on the list for a long time. You're not going to get it. Okay. You're not going to get into the program. So your child turns 18, you get them SSI and Medicaid, get them Medicaid. They might be on your health insurance. So your health insurance is first and Medicaid is second. So let's say your health insurance plan pays drug plans, and the copay on your drug plan is high. Let's say it's $45, but the copay on Medicaid might be $10. You will get the drug for $10, right? So 18, child gets Medicaid, is going to be secondary to health insurance. All right. So when will your child get Medicare? And that is dependent upon so Medicare is something we buy into, right? Medicaid is under that. If you go back to the class and you look at my circle, the top quadrants were for people who are 18, they're going to get Medicaid, they're going to get SSI and Medicaid. They haven't paid into the system. So when do you drop down to the bottom of those other programs of SSDI or Social Security on a parent's record that goes along with Medicare? So those go with Medicare, and the SSI and Medicaid go together. So this question was, an adult has Medicare and Medicaid. They're probably an adult either because they have had some work record somewhere along the line, or they got Medicare because they got their benefits on their parents. So go back. That's one of the things I always say, pull your Social Security record. When you look at your Social Security record, you're going to see how much you're going to get for retirement. It's also going to say if you became disabled, how much you could get. It's also going to tell you when you retire, become disabled, or die, how much your family can get. And your family could be a minor child or an adult disabled person, or, and it says how much a spouse might get if the child's a minor. And it also says how much is the maximum they could pay a family from that person. So who can get benefits on my record? It could be me, it could be my spouse, and it could be my son who has a disability. Those are the different people who can be paid, or if I had a minor child. Okay, so all those people can get paid from my Social Security record. So in this case, if the adult child has Medicare because they got benefits on either their own or parents' record, they're now getting Medicare and Medicaid. So they don't lose your you don't lose your Medicaid when you get Medicare. Medicare pays first and Medicaid is secondary. So we could have someone who's working and the parents are still working, and the law says in most states, when does the child lose their health insurance under the parent, right? So we said it was age 26, but most states have a statute that says if your child is an adult child with a disability, they can keep the group health insurance as long as the parents have it. There's a lot of rules by state. Some states say, well, as long as it's a group plan, it's almost always the case. If the group plan is self-funded by the company most of the time. So first of all, let's go back a minute. What controls the company's decision to do this? So 8 is a state. The state where the company is domiciled. So if somebody works for Walgreens, as an example, Walgreens is domiciled in Illinois, right? So the Illinois rules apply to anybody who works for Walgreens. So if you work for Walgreens in New York or you work for Walgreens in Florida, Illinois rules apply, okay, for your child. So it's the state that the company is in, and you don't have to work in that state or live in that state, but you do have to be working for a company that was domiciled in a state. So that will be the first factor you need to understand. So let's say your child can stay on like this Dr. Wilkie put in that the child has Blue Cross Blue Shield probably from the parents' record. So if they're getting group insurance, how does that all play together? So if you have group insurance and Medicare and Medicaid, Medicare will apply to the group insurance based on how big the company is. So if the company has 100 employees or less or 100 employees more, it sometimes determines who's first. But in this case, I'm going to make an assumption that the Blue Cross insurance is first and the Medicare is second and the Medicaid is third. Medicaid's always after everything else. So I will tell you some limiting factors. Who are the doctors that are supporting your child? If the doctor takes Medicare and the doctor takes Medicaid, you're going to have pretty good coverage for your child. Why? Because Medicare pays anything that a doctor does in a hospital, or the doctor does, or the hospital does, with copays. So there's a hospital copay and there's a doctor copay. And after those copays, then there are copays. So there's deductibles and copays. If the hospital will take Medicare, okay, after the hospital deductible. So you say, okay, what's my limit there? And Medicaid only takes it for sure if the doctor takes it. Medicaid pays hospitals, Medicaid takes doctors. Some doctors take Medicaid, but a lot do not. So if all you had is Medicare and Medicaid, your worry is Medicaid many times won't be accepted for drugs unless a Medicaid doctor has prescribed it. So knowing this is the hard part. So if the question is, should you keep the Blue Cross? I can only answer that to say, is the doctor, how is your coverage? I would say hospital coverage with Medicaid and Medicare is probably great, okay? And your copay is 20% of your doctor bills out of Medicare, and Medicaid's going to pick that up. So hospital coverage for Medicare and Medicaid is probably pretty good. It's the doctors that define this, right? So if your doctors don't take Medicaid, I would definitely keep the Blue Cross. My gut is I would typically keep the Blue Cross and let Medicare and Medicaid be secondary, but that's a big rule of thumb about, what's costing you. If your Blue Cross has a really big bill to it, then you got to evaluate what can you afford. But if it was me and it was my child, if I could keep the Blue Cross and I could keep Medicare, which has a low copay, and Medicaid might even pay your Medicare premiums, right? So all of that I would put together. Do you need a supplemental? If you have Blue Cross, Medicare, and Medicaid, you definitely don't need a supplemental. So the supplemental is only going to pay what Medicare and Medicaid won't pay. So first, if you have group insurance, I wouldn't drop it. Okay, as long as I could keep that, I would definitely keep that. Because then you're gonna, if Medicaid's not covering something, if you don't have Medicaid doctors, I would keep that supplement I would keep that Blue Cross for sure. If, let's assume the majority of people, when are you going to lose that group? You're probably going to lose that group insurance when you leave, because they only have to let you keep it until as long as you're working. So your child's not going to keep that in normal circumstances. So let's say your child now only has Medicare and Medicaid. Should you buy a supplement? Medicare A is covering your hospital bills, and it has a, I don't know what the deductible is now, but maybe let's say $1,500 or something in that range before Medicare kicks in. Then it pays 80%. So what would not be paid? The deductible and the 20%. Medicaid will pick that up from the hospital. So from a hospital's perspective, your Medicaid and Medicare are covering hospital bills pretty well. It's the doctors that you care about. If you're going to buy a supplement, you're going to buy it because your doctors don't take Medicaid. Okay. That's the place you have to start. I always tell parents, go to every doctor. And if they're all going to I don't know many doctors who don't take Medicare, but there are some. But I would find out, does the doctor take Medicaid? And the doctors that typically don't are specialists. So if you really need those doctors and the bills are going to be high, consider a supplement. Okay, now there are cases. So the other thing you should know about that, this is a really complicated piece of stuff. Medicaid, so if you're getting Medicare and your child has low income, relatively, they are eligible for other programs called QMB and SLIM. Those programs pay the Medicare premiums. Okay, Medicaid kicks in and pays those. So again, all of the answers to this is what's the income your child has if they're too high? And if they have QMB or SLIM, which are programs that will use Medicaid to pay Medicare premiums, you can't have a supplement and that too. So yikes. All right. But you only need a supplement. If you really do have the Blue Cross, you definitely don't need a supplement. If you have Medicare and Medicaid and your doctors all take Medicaid, you don't need a supplement either. If your child's living in a residential setting and they have Medicare and Medicaid, I will tell you, in most of those residential settings, the doctors who provide services typically take both as well. And we don't see families who have a child in a residential setting needing a supplement. That was a long answer to a short question. Okay. All right. There's one more I missed here. Next question. Here it is. When is the best time to start working on SSI before turning 18? Let's see. I would say at least a year before your child turns 18, you want to start gathering information. If you don't have a special needs trust and you need one, so first thing you need to know is gathering the medical information. We talked about that. So making sure that you're working with all the places you're going to need the medical information. Now, you're not going to provide to Social Security the medical information yourself. Okay. But I want to know what it says, because sometimes I see doctors writing something and I'm like, okay, I need to go back to the doctor and talk about, is there other reports, right? If I need backup information from places. If your child is borderline and there's any kind of question about it, Social Security is going to come back and want other reports. So do we need another updated current medical report if you look at it? So I'd go a year before and say, Do I have to have more current medical records because they're not going to take something 10 years old? Do I have to have some kind of other evaluation, vocational assessment done to prove that my child has limited ability to work? So that's all they're asking. Is they're asking, can your child work? So are you going to have, so a year before, I would start looking at that, and I would also start looking at, is there money in my child's name? Okay, so that I could, if I need to get an ABLE account and move something out of their name and move it to the ABLE, if there's less than 15,000, I can move it to the ABLE. If it's a year before, and I know if I look 2 years before and I say, wow, there's 30,000 in my child's name, how much can we move to an ABLE in 1 year is 15. So I would, no, you can't put money in your child's name and get this benefit. And so if I know I have more, do I have enough time to get it moved to an ABLE, or do I have to see an attorney and get a first party special needs trust set up to move it there? So the answer to that question is, how much money do you have in your child's name? Okay, you cannot apply until they're 18. So, but you can get everything ready. You can be talking to doctors. You can be looking at moving money around if you need to. Okay. Okay, is there a need to have both an ABLE and a special needs trust? If so, what are the benefits of having both? Good question. All right, so I'm going to talk about these in time frame, first of all. So a special needs trust is a document that we have to have when we die to fund any inheritance. And so we want to have that set up before we die. And since we don't know that, we'd want it set up. But we're typically thinking about as big, that's the big bucket. The ABLE, then the third party special needs trust, doesn't have a payback to the government when we pass away. So if I leave money to that special needs trust, it's going to be for my child's future. And when my child passes away, it's going to go to other people, whoever I said in the document. The ABLE account is shorter term. And so it might be used for, my child gets their government benefits and it goes in there and then we spend it. But then all of a sudden, grandma sends them money, and we want to put it in the ABLE, because if we put it in your child's account, that will count against them. And you can put it in your child's account as long as it's $50. But if grandma writes a check that's going to put benefits and that money over $2,000, you need an ABLE right away to get the money below. So why do you have an ABLE? A, to keep your child's money below the $2,000, so that people who want to gift can gift directly to the ABLE account. So I would have both. Who controls the ABLE? The ABLE account is owned by your child. The special needs trust is never owned by your child. The ABLE account can be controlled by your child, but if you're the guardian, it is controlled by the guardian. Okay. If you are the guardian, but feel like your child can't manage it, someone else could be an authorized user on the special needs, on the ABLE account. So the ABLE account could be money accessible to your child. The special needs trust cannot. Another way I sometimes have to use the ABLE with families is the child is living somewhere that has subsidized rent, but the rent is more than could be paid by the child's benefits. So if I have a son in that situation, he's living in subsidized housing, but his rent is too high for his benefits to pay the whole rent. Remember, government benefits is to pay basic support, room, board, food, things like that. So his rent is too high. A special needs trust, if my child has SSI, cannot pay rent. If it does, my SSI is going to be lowered for my son. So how do I do that? Can I just have my son pay part of the rent and then I pay the rest? Okay. If I pay the rest, again, my son's SSI will go down. So if I don't want to goof up my son's SSI, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put money into his ABLE, and then from the ABLE we can pay his rent. So I can't pay the landlord, but I can fund the ABLE account. A special needs trust from SSI perspective should not pay rent, but an ABLE can. So the ABLE won't disqualify him, but if it comes out of the special needs trust, it will lower his SSI. Comes out of the ABLE, it will not. So should I have both? I tell every family, have both. The able costs, if you keep it to the minimum, won't be a lot of expenses within it. If you put more into it, it can be invested, and they work together. If you also have both, so for my son, I'm leaving so much money when I pass away to a special needs trust. I have an able now, and I have a special needs trust now. A special needs trust right now doesn't have anything in it. The able does. And he can control. I'm not his guardian. He's able to, not control and understand the money, but he can have a checking account and a debit card on it. But you only put $15,000 a year in, and I don't want the able account to have a lot of money because that has a payback at his death. But I want it to be a working tool. So right now I can put money in it for his rent. What happens if I die? Because who's going to help subsidize it? Who's going to put money in that able account? So I need those two documents to work together. Here's a special needs trust where I leave the money when I die. And here's a working document of an able account that he controls. He can never control the special needs trust. Okay. There's got to be a trustee other than him. So my special needs trust says, trustee, you are allowed to put up to $15,000 a year into the able account so he has access to money because he can never do this. And I want him to have access to money. So they work together. So I would do both. I would definitely, without a doubt, have the special needs trust created. I would consider the situation and do I need an able? But to have an able around so that you cannot lose your SSI and Medicaid and that money goes over there whenever you have a problem is a great tool. Okay. I think that's all I have to say about that right now, unless there's other questions. Okay, good question. Should the special needs trust be standalone or within the will? What does that mean? Okay, so there's two kinds of documents that we consider. One is called testamentary and one is called a live trust. So a testamentary trust means it is created in my testament or my will. A living document is one that's created when I'm living. So if I have a special needs trust that is a testamentary, what it would be in my will, I have a will that says when I die, leave my money to my 3 children. But the part that's going to Mark inside a will, it says this, inside when Mark passes away, create a special needs trust for him and put his money into that. So when does my special needs trust exist? When I die. It creates it and puts his money in it. That's option 1. Option 2 is go to the attorney and say, attorney, I need a will. But I don't want that special needs trust inside of it. I want you to create one today. That's called a standalone special needs trust. So I've got this standalone trust and the attorney creates it now, not when I die. He writes it up, he or she writes it up, and I sign it. When I sign it, I have a trust for my son. It's called the Mark Ehlert Special Needs Trust, Mary Anne Ehlert Trustee. Do I have any money in it yet? Nope. But it exists because the paper says it exists. What is the difference between doing it inside my will and doing it now? This one exists. The one in my will does not. This one exists when I die. So why would I even bother to create this one? Because I don't think I'm going to put anything in when I die. Why don't I just use the will? Because right now the law says we can have this one. It says we can have a special needs trust. But if the law changes, right? The laws change all the time. We're living through that today's days, right? If the law changes and says no more special needs trust, we're just letting these people do too much for their child. We've heard all kinds of stuff, right? If they get rid of special needs trust or they make them really onerous, when you pass away, it'll follow the law of the land, okay? Because that's when it gets created. And if it says no more special needs trusts and your will says they created one, but there's no more trusts or it has really onerous rules, that's what you got. If you create one now, you're going to follow the rules of today and they're good. So what do you want? If or sure? I'd say sure, right? Why else would you want to create a standalone one? So my son, well, I have 3 boys, one with special needs. The other 2 are adults. If they have life insurance in the job and they don't have children yet, and they want to leave the beneficiary of their life insurance to their brother with special needs, they could either say, leave it, if I die, leave the life insurance that I have on my job to the special needs trust. and they can leave it directly to the trust that I created because it exists. They could also say, leave it to the trust that will be created that was created in my mom's will. If they die first, is there a special needs trust? Nope. It doesn't exist until I die. So that's called piggybacking. If you have parents and grandparents say, you know what, I want to leave something to, Mark Ehlert because it's our grandson, and, the other boys will get it from mom and her estate, but Mark's going to need more. So we would like something to leave some to him. They don't have to go create their own special needs trust. They could leave it to the one I created already because it exists. Can they leave it to the one that doesn't exist yet? No, they could, but it doesn't exist yet. And so if I don't die first, it won't exist. Okay. So you want a special needs trust that is a standalone document. So what if you go to the attorney and the attorney says to you, you're not going to fund this now. Why set it up now? Right. If the attorney says that to you and says, we're going to do a testamentary special needs trust, you know what I would do? I would leave his office, his or her office, because if they're doing that, the special needs attorneys don't do that. So if you're working with an attorney who is doing that, they're probably not working in this world deeply in that capacity. Okay. I would not allow someone to do that for me because it's not a good answer. Okay. All right. We got some more questions here. Can adult child deposit their earned income and Medicare income to the first party trust, which has no income limit, and is that better than an ABLE account? Okay, so can an adult child deposit their income and their Medicare income to a first party trust? They can. They can take their money and put it into the first party trust because they can put anything that's their own money into it. And there's no income limit. Yes, the answer is yes. I would first have them fund the ABLE. So when they get there, when you say Medicare income, I think you really mean disability income, Social Security. So if they make money and have earned income, can they put it into the first party trust? Yes. It doesn't solve the income problem, though. It only solves the asset problem. So when your child has SSI or SSDI, that's income. And when they work, they have income. The Social Security POMs now say that you are allowed to direct deposit your Social Security checks to the ABLE, but you still have to account for them the same way of how you're spending for them. But let's say you're not going to do that. So if you put money into your child's account and it's too much, you can transfer it directly to the ABLE. Now, how much should we say can go to an ABLE? So an ABLE can take $15,000 a year, but if the child is working, it can also take another $12,000 of their earnings. So that's $15,000 that could come from anybody, including your child, and it could come from any of their buckets, and it could also come from their $12,000 of their work. So they can have $27,000 of income going over to an ABLE. And I think I would make a first party trust is for the bigger pots of money and the ABLE is for the smaller pots of money. But if the ABLE doesn't accommodate the 15 or 27,000, you have more than that, then yes, you can definitely go to a first party trust. Recognize that the difference between the two of them is the first party trust has a payback from the date the child was born or disabled. Okay. So it's going to go all the way back to any Medicaid that was spent for that child from the beginning of time. And the ABLE is only going to go back to the time that account was opened. So just remember that there's more payback on the first party trust. Okay. The ABLE is also tax-free. So it's a little less cumbersome. And there's really because it's tax-free, there's no tax reporting. If you're opening up a first party trust is going to have the tax, and then it's going to be taxed to your child because it's their Social Security number. So think that one over carefully. How does DAC Social Security work with Medicaid? Can the child receive too much Social Security and lose their Medicaid? Good question. Okay, so what is DAC? What is DAC? So remember I was talking earlier about DAC is disabled adult child. So when I retire or I become disabled, or I die, my child with a disability who has been disabled before the age of 22 and doesn't have their own work record to create their own Social Security disability becomes eligible for this DAC. How much is DAC? DAC is equal to, I'm going to use myself as an example. Let's say my Social Security is $3,000 a month at age 67. So it's called our Social Security, our FRA, our full retirement age Social Security. So if my Social Security full retirement age is 67, whatever my Social Security is, I'm going to use 3,000 and so do this calculation. So let's say at age 67, I'm eligible for that and I get it. My child, who is an adult who is disabled for the age of 26, for the age of 22, will be eligible for 1/2 of my FRA Social Security. So if it was 3,000, my child's going to get 1,500. Okay. If I take my Social Security at 62, so let's say I don't get 3,000, but I only get 2,200, my child's DAC is still based on my 3,000, always on my first full retirement age, even if I take it early. So I take it early so that my child gets into the system, because I know this is the whole thing we did on retiring for 3, if you haven't heard this before. So when I retire, I kick in this program for my child. Why would I retire earlier? Why would I take less Social Security? My child's still going to get based on my 67 amount, but I want them to get into the program. So let's say I knew that I was going to retire at a certain age, and that's when my health insurance stops. And when mine stops, my child has no coverage except for Medicaid. I want them in the Medicare system. So they have to be in the DAC world or the Social Security disability world for 2 years before they get Medicare. Very complicated thing to look at, especially when we have couples. Sometimes we have a mom and dad's going to retire at 70 or take a Social Security at 70. That's a long time to wait for your child to get into Medicare. So we have the spouse who's earning less, let's say mom, take her Social Security early so the child can get half of her full retirement age disability Social Security. And then when dad retires at 70, the child's amount will be bumped up based on his 67 amount. Okay. So can the child receive too much Social Security and lose their Medicaid? So they can, if it's a high DAC amount, they will probably not lose it, but they will have a spend down. So if their income is too high, they have a spend down. If the child has any kind of a job, they could also buy into Medicaid. So there's a program that you can buy into it. But most of the times, if child has a high Social Security, they won't lose Medicaid, but they will have a spend down. Okay. So if they're in any kind of waiver program, some of that, their things that it's paying for can be used to reduce their spend down. So what's a spend down? It's like a deductible. So they typically will not lose it, but they could have a spend down. Okay. Okay. Let's see what the next question is here. I know you mentioned the 100,000 limit for ABLE. Is there any limit for special needs trust? No. So 2 things. The ABLE account has only the $100,000 limit that applies to SSI. That's an important thing to know. So if my ABLE account gets up to $100,000, 100,001, my child's SSI will be suspended. When that SSI goes back, when the ABLE account goes back to 99,000, my child's SSI starts up. So it's a suspension, not a cancellation. When my child goes into SSDI, because it's only SSI that has the limit. So when my child goes into SSDI because they worked, or they get DAC, that is not SSI. And so when my child goes into the the DAC world, the 100,000 limit on the ABLE no longer applies. It only applies to that. Okay. And there is no Medicaid payback on ABLE accounts, only Medicaid. There's no SSI payback. There's a Medicaid payback on ABLEs. Okay. The special needs trust has no payback, which is why we like it better. And there's no limit. So a special needs trust can have $1 billion in it. The ABLE account can have 100 when they're on SSI, but the 100 can go up to, I'm going to say the ABLE maximum on an ABLE is equal to the same state limit for your 529. So in the state of Illinois, where I live, the maximum you can put into a 529 is 450,000. So the maximum I can put into my son's ABLE is 450,000. Okay. But I wouldn't want more than 100 in it until when I retire and he goes off of the SSI system and gets into the DAC system. I don't care about that 100,000 limit. Okay. All right. Let me tell you about something else I think about Social Security, special needs trusts. Most of us think about special needs trusts as something that's going to be funded when we die. So that's true. Okay. But what I've been learning lately, we always learn as time goes on. So when I started this 30 years ago, I agreed, why would anybody open up a special needs trust now? You got to open up the accounts, you got to do tax returns. Most special needs trusts, while the parents are alive, is on their Social Security number and it's part of their estate, and that works, right? It's when the parents die that it gets its own Social Security number and it has to have a tax return file. So most attorneys will teach people, don't worry about funding it right now, do it, let it be funded with your death. So I just had a call. I've had lots of these conversations lately with families going, okay, now we are not 30 or 40 or 50 anymore. We're 70 or we're 80 as parents, right? Whatever age we are. And then we start thinking about, we did all this planning just in case. And pretty soon we all have an end date, I call it. And as older we get, we start thinking about that end date, thinking, okay, there is an infinite time that I'm going to be on this planet. And I'm doing pretty well and I'm still healthy. But at some point we get ill. Stuff happens or we just get old, right? And so the reality of life is that we start to think more about that reality of the end. And so I see a lot of parents who are older saying, I made decisions and I'm not sure if they're the right ones, but I'm doing the best I can. And I picked my children to be trustees on the special needs trust. And I picked, and we started talking, having these discussions about, hey, did I pick the right people? Can they really do the job? But the other conversation is that we have a lot. I had a conversation the other day with somebody, just yesterday. And they said, so our other son is going to be the trustee. And so I said, what does he know? And they said, well, we never talk about it. I said, well, why would you think he knows all this stuff? You've been learning at all these sessions. Has he stepped up at any point in time and done anything like that to help us understand what the limitations might be? And how Social Security works and how Medicaid works and how a special needs trust. And they said, well, no, we never talk about it. He'll learn it later. But then as soon as they said that, they were like, well, later isn't as far away anymore. And maybe we should do something different. I says, I agree. At the point at which people here are saying, should I have both? A, yes. B, open them. Why is it their responsibility to have to learn all this all at one time when we got a lifetime? We had all this time from the time our child was born to now to learn about our child's needs, their medical needs, their care needs, their capabilities, government benefits, special needs. Just we've had a lifetime. We die and somebody's going to have to be wham. They're going to have to learn it all. And trusts are a weird concept. Okay, what is it? Is it a place you go to? It's a book. Wow, how do you get money in a book, right? You take the book and you stick money in it. It's a concept. And it's kind of hard unless you're in the financial business and we get it. We're trained, right? But we don't get trained overnight either. So why do we expect parents? I mean, I kind of laugh that I've been doing these presentations now for 30 years. Kind of scary, right? And now I know a lot about it. What reasonable expectation do I have that a new parent knows any of this? New parents don't even know how to do wills for themselves, let alone all this stuff. And now all of a sudden, we get older and we are expecting our future trustees and guardians to know all this stuff. And so I keep asking, what could we do? This has been my focus lately because people are asking me this all the time. What can we do to make sure that the people after us are going to really know what they're doing? Why don't we make it work? Why don't we think about the special needs trust that needs to get set up? We got the trust set up, but we haven't implemented it. Okay, we're just assuming that this person's going to know that you need to go somewhere, you need to get a tax ID, you need to open up another account in the name of that trust, you need to get a checking account, the money from mom and dad's accounts need to go into that, and then they need to know how to use it. So I've kind of come to the point where I'm thinking, I think parents should start opening up an account in the name of the trust, even if it's got their tax ID on it, or if you're in a situation where there's higher taxes, you might create an irrevocable trust where you're actually opening an account with a tax ID. Open the account, have the checkbook, put some money in, it doesn't have to be a lot, and then sit down with those future trustees and guardians and say, here it is. Here's the bank account for the money. Here's where this is. This is the instructions of what you're going to have to do. These are the people you're going to have to see. Give them instructions. And so in the old days, when I say, don't worry about it, the trust will be funded later, we're leaving too much up to the next generation. They're already going to have, we want them to be the care people. And maybe we even want corporate trustees to do all the hard lifting and let your child be the person who's going to make the decisions and work with those people who are going to do the administration. Everybody's going to be different. You might have children who are really competent at this and other people who are going to be competent, maybe not. But when we talk about special needs trusts, I'm starting to say we need to be a little more proactive about making some of this implemented versus just developed. Okay. Sometimes I give you too much information. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to give you thoughts about what you should be thinking about. And if you're 18 or 30 or 40, I'm going into stuff that maybe you don't have to think about. But if you're 50 and older, you do think about. Okay. Would you recommend maintaining the control of the adult child Social Security payments, or the Social Security go directly to the agency manning the supervised living home? Currently, I'm the rep payee and I pay all the bills. After my death, would you recommend the supervised living home agency manage the Social Security payments? I think it depends upon the situation. If you're working with them, I would say most of the time the Social Security goes to the agency and they leave $30 or $50 in your child's account for incidentals. I think that's a trust issue. It's also, just as Jessica talking about it, if you're going to do it, maybe you want to do it, but it can't be at your death that you transfer it. It might be at your incapacity that you transfer it. So I'm a big believer of getting things work the way they're going to work when I'm gone. I'm not going to have any special powers that I can say, okay, do that now. So I might want to do it for a while and make sure it works. And then I might start transferring over after I know that the agency will do a good job. And they're not going to take all of it because they're going to have to keep some in your child's name for their care. I would not have the agency be the trustee of the special needs trust or involved in the ABLE account. I would keep those dollars separate because most of the time you're required to turn, when your child lives residentially, you're usually required to turn those payments over to them. So if that's the case, you don't have much of a choice. I would, if you want to do it now, that's fine. But I think at some point, if that's going to be a long-term solution, you might start putting that in there so that that transition, that extra job isn't given to the future people. I hope that helps. Yeah, each situation is different, so I'm always a little cautious. Okay. Do you recommend having Medicaid review the special needs trust? Go ahead and do it before they ask. No. So don't ask, don't tell. Yeah. If you trust your attorney, right? So if the attorney is a really good attorney and they've done the documents right, I wouldn't worry about it. If you're questioning if the trust is right, I would have a second opinion from the attorney, not a second opinion from Medicaid. Because Medicaid, they just have, some of them have great access and do it quickly. All somebody has to do is make a goofy decision and you're at risk. So I would, rather than have Medicaid review it, it's up to you. If the special need, if it's a first party special needs trust, they're all going to be reviewed before it's even put in place. That happens. But if it's a third party special needs trust and you have confidence in the attorney, I don't think I would do that. I would, if you question the quality of the special needs trust, I would then have a second attorney do a review for you. Okay. Okay. Watching the time here. We still have a little time. I don't want to go over. Okay. I love all these questions. Okay. Our 4-year-old son is high functioning and we're hopeful with gene therapy. There's a possibility he may be considered to no longer have a disability. How would an ABLE account or a special needs trust be created if no longer was considered disabled as far as conversion or forfeiture? Okay. So the special needs, the ABLE account is accessible. So if the money's set aside and the child no longer has a disability, you might, so when I asked the head of the Illinois ABLE, what is this money? How could this money be used? And it's been set up for a person who had a disability at the time. She always says to me, if it betters their life. So the question is, would this money be able to use to support them? And if they no longer have a disability, use that for education, use it for other things. Okay. It was put in legitimately. I would think that you could take it out and use it for something that would better their life. And if they have any kind of limitations, use it for those to make their lives better. The special needs trust, I get that asked question a lot because I work with a lot of organizations that the children could or are high functioning, but need that support. So remember, the special needs trust is for over and above what the government pays for. So your child's here and the government's paying here, but your child needs all the other things. Would I set up a special needs trust and fund it with the hope that my child doesn't need it? Yeah. If you're not going to fund a lot of it, I wouldn't do major funding. And later on you open it, but you haven't funded it, or you've funded it with a little amount, and you in your lifetime see that your child's doing well. You can undo it, right? You can say, change your will and say, don't fund it. I just had one recently where the attorney added language to say, I am leaving it. What you're doing when you're saying the special needs trust is you're making the money inaccessible to the child, right? But the trustee has discretion of how it's used. So this trust actually had language in it that said, if the trustee felt that using this money that would cause the child to become disqualified, it's giving the trustee the authority to do that. Now, what would happen is the child would lose their benefits if they had any, but if they weren't getting them anyway, what difference does it make? So I would have a discussion with the attorney about that if you thought that was the case, and they might put some language in there like that. But if you're still alive, you would just not fund the special needs trust. We don't always know what's going to happen long term, right? So I would set up the special needs trust. If you're going to fund it low, but I probably in this situation would not fund it. I would have it there just in case. And then if things go well later, you just say, I'm not going to use that. I'm just going to leave it to a regular special needs trust, or have language in the trust perhaps that says if the child doesn't have special needs and the trustee feels that it's the right thing to do, that it flips into a non-special needs trust. I think they can do that. Okay. Harder decisions. All right. Do you recommend having the guardianship be written so that the parents who are guardians have independent authority to act? What are your thoughts on this? I think that's legal advice you need to get. I think if the parents are most of the time on the same page, and you're doing that so that nothing is held up by one parent being unavailable, I think that would be a good thing. I see that a lot. I don't see the parents always having to agree with everything. I deal with a lot of cases in the divorce world, and sometimes the documents say that the parents do have to agree if they're divorced. Causes lots of conflict. I think that's really an important legal question. I'm not an attorney, so I'm going to be careful here. I think it's convenient, right? So if parents are typically on the same page and you need that independence from the perspective of one traveling and the other one, I think that's also dependent upon the judge that you have and can you do it? So I think I would leave that question to be answered by your guardianship attorney. If you email me, I could ask a couple of guardianship attorneys their views, and I would be happy to share that with you. Okay. All right. A lot of attorneys that I work with a lot are always happy to give me their views on things. They'll also always put the caveat is, I don't know the situation, but in certain situations. Will you explain the difference in assets, resources, and income as they relate to Medicaid? Okay, that's good. So income is two kinds of income, earned income and non-earned income. So income would be money a person makes. That's your paycheck, right? Your paycheck is income. So income is money coming in that is not saved yet. Income becomes, it's what we use to pay our bills. But if we don't pay our bills and we save it, it becomes an asset, right? So income would be a paycheck. It would be Social Security. It would be income from investments. So if I have a CD and it's producing interest, that might be income. Assets and resources. So assets are anything we own. So an asset would be a home. It could be a car. It could be mutual funds. It could be stocks, bonds. Okay, so assets are assets we own. Income is things that we earn, and income can become an asset. Okay, assets, income being produced by an asset could be income. So if I have stocks and it's paying dividends, the dividends are an income. Now, sometimes when we're doing certain kinds of applications, they're not double counting. So an asset's an asset and an income is an income, and the income this is produced is not considered income. When we have to list our assets and income, the income is going to be paychecks. It's going to be Social Security. If I have a CD over here and it's producing interest, I don't have to produce that, report that interest is income. There's a pretty big line between them. Okay, hope that helps. Does Protected Tomorrows sell or help with life insurance? Okay, so what Protected Tomorrows does, I will tell you kind of what we are existing about. So no, Protected Tomorrows does not sell life insurance, but we have an affiliate company that does. So Protected Tomorrows helps you figure out how much you might want. So we do a life care plan for your child and say, okay, what's it going to look like? And then we feed it into, so we have three distinct entities here. One is, we started out with one entity, but we grew over 30 years to say, okay, each company needs different kinds of people. And so we have somebody who does just financial plans. We don't manage money. We just look at parent situations, say what's your assets, what's your income, what's your retirement plan look like. And then we have Protected Tomorrows over here. And Protected Tomorrows is the one that says, are you getting all the benefits you can get? Where's the housing programs? Where's the school programs? Looking specifically on those people are psychologists or therapists that work on that capacity or worked in, we have a woman who used to work at Center for Independent Living. And so she's just doing that piece of it. But she also can help us say what's coming in of benefits for that child and what are their expenses going to be and what's going to be needed to fill the hole. And we take that and feed it to the parents' plan in the other company called Ehlert Financial Group. And that's where we'd say, that's where we can find out, this person might over here say, well, you know, this family is going to need $1 million for that child into a trust. It'll pass over to this other group of people who are financial people who actually are licensed to look at insurance and do that. So we do that. We have another company, and that company doesn't do anything with investments. And then we have another company over here called Forum Financial, and that's where we manage money. I'm a partner. I've merged with a company to just do that. I want to spend all my time doing these other two things. I rely upon partners to help me build portfolios, so I don't have to do that every day. But I would tell you that the money management piece is what allows me to do donate a lot of the money that I make there over to Protected Tomorrows so that we can do a lot of free stuff and training, and that's where I want to spend my time. Okay. The one thing I've learned over my years is that I want to help. I always teach people you can help people, but you can't always do it free. You either have to be a not-for-profit or you have to help somebody, and by helping somebody with something, it allows you to help two people, maybe for free. Okay, so Protected Tomorrows is purely a consulting company on the special needs side. The life insurance comes into our Ehlert Financial Group piece, which has an insurance license. But we can help you think about what are the different types of insurance. We do educate on, I will tell you, people say with life insurance, what should we have? And they'll say, well, I have $1 million of insurance at my job, so I'm going to leave that for the special needs trust. The problem with that is it's usually term insurance and it's with your job. And when you leave your job, you have no more insurance. So typically, if you're going to use insurance for a special needs trust, it has to be something that exists when you die. And it can't be something that expires. So look at your insurance and make sure if it's term insurance, it's going to expire in 10, 20, 30 years. And if you live past it, you can't afford it because the premiums will go from $100 a month to $10,000 a month. You can't keep that. You need to have universal life or whole life insurance or variable life insurance that funds that special needs trust. And the best way, if you don't have enough money to fund it, is something called second to die. And second to die is mom and dad both insured, one policy. So insurance, the basis of insurance is pool resources of lots of people, and then it pays out on when something happens to one, right? Well, second to die insurance is pooling the money of a couple. And so that when the second one dies, it funds the trust. Because as long as, if I had a spouse, as long as my spouse is alive, I'm sure he's also going to take care of my child. It's when we both die that I care about. I happen to be single, so I don't get to do a second to die. I have to find something that just on my life. So everybody is different. There's all kinds of ways to do this stuff. Okay. All right. Will you please explain qualifying income trust as it related to keeping Medicaid coverage? I don't quite know what that question is. So when you're talking about Medicaid coverage, typically, a lot of times when we talk about Medicaid coverage in that case, sometimes we're talking about Medicaid for seniors, and we're trying to get Medicaid for that person. And so sometimes we can take assets and create it into a trust that only the income is eligible and it protects the assets. There's so many rules around that. I hate to give it a class on that here, but you can have income that's producing, a trust that's producing income and the assets protected. So I'm not going to get too far into that, but it's just because it's there's some limitations by state, et cetera, as well. Okay, you can email me and I can give you information. Okay, let's see what else we have here. We have a few more minutes. Or are we catching the end? I think we are close about to the end. So does anybody have any, I'm going to see if there's anything I missed, but I think I got most of the questions. So in the classes, we talked about benefits, and I think we talked about a lot of those here. The most complicated things that happen, SSI doesn't have to be really complicated. Know that when your child goes into one of those other programs like SSDI or DAC, they will get a Medicare card. Surprise, it comes in the mail. So pay attention if that comes. Know a lot about that when your child's on your group insurance, it will stop. Okay, it's not lifetime. However, I have had people, I had just had a dad pass away and his child was on his health insurance and the company said, we'll let the child keep it. So my rule to that is always ask. You never know what the company's rules are going to be about a disabled child. Sometimes there's benevolent employers that will do stuff for us. They still can't just do stuff without rules and backup, because you would do for one, you got to do it for everybody. But I say always ask. Okay. So DAC, when you retire, we always think it's simple, but when you retire, making decisions about how benefits will apply will come into play. So it's really important that your retirement will impact your child, and knowing that. Let's see, looks like there's a new message. Thinking of my daughter's future is overwhelming. Where would it be a good place to start? Good question. So I always say there's two questions to ask about your child. I start here. So first question I ask is, what is the best thing that can happen for your child besides a cure? Okay. What is the best thing that can happen for their future? And start a log of what do you want for them? What's the best thing? Is it, I can tell you what the top two answers are if I played Family Feud, because people usually start with two things. I will hear happy and I will hear independent, but I'll also hear friends, financially secure, a safe place to live, a good medical treatment. I I will hear all those things. But the top two answers I hear are happy and independent as possible, right? So I was doing a presentation one day. I was working with a group of families, 60 families, and we were starting to think about how do we think about future residential. And we went through all this steps that we take. And the answers they all gave me, and we were looking at residential and the possibilities, but it started, the first answer was always happy and independent. And we had to dig down. So we got to a stage where we were at the point of thinking about how much it's going to cost and how would it look. And so I said, well, let's bring some investors in who might participate in our conversation. So I asked some investors I knew from my old banking days to say, could you come and just listen to what families say? I want them to hear how you think about it. If they needed to create something, what would an investor think about creating a housing program for our children? And so I let the families talk about what they wanted, and they used those terms of how they kept saying, as I said, tell the investment firm what you want for your child. And they used those terms, happy and independent. And they came back and said, well, what does that mean to you? It was a great question, right? Because we tend to think about safe and happy. And since that was 20 years ago that happened. And so I will tell you, whatever you answer to me about what's the best thing that can happen, you need to take that. Our job is not to use terms that we start with the big and broad, and then we break it down, and we break it down, and we break it down. And you're not going to know today what you know 10 years from now. So sometimes I'm sitting with families in a group. I was doing something at Gigi's Playhouse, and there was a couple sitting together next to each other. And one had a child who was 40 years old, and one had a child who was 4 months old sitting next to each other. And when I asked that question, they both wanted the same thing, but it meant something very different to the family who had the 40-year-old to the family who had the 4-month-old. They both wanted their child to have a future of happy and independence. What each one had to do at that stage, what the baby was looking at the other parent saying, well, what have you done? And learning a lot. But think about what's happened in the last 40 years of the future of what can happen with our kids. I mean, I've done presentations 30 years ago where people had disabilities and they didn't think their children were going to live. And now I'm talking to those children with the disabilities and helping them think about their jobs. So stuff has really changed, right? So all we can do is say, where are we today? And then our job, and where do you start, is thinking about how do I take that to the next level? If I say happy, what is happy for my child today? And then next year you say ask the same question. So when you answer that question, what's the best thing that can happen? Write it down. Okay, right? Get a card and write down the best thing that can happen. On an anniversary of that day, go back and look at it. It's probably the same thing, but what have you added to it that means happy? And every year go back and say what's happy. And pretty soon you have developed this big, thick book of all what happy means. And then you can start defining it further into this vision of what you think you need to do. It's hard to do it unless you concentrate on it. The other question I will suggest in what's a good place to start is identify your fears. So what's the best thing that can happen for your child, and what's your biggest fear at that point in time? And if you do that once a year and always concentrate on those two things, they become like your benchmark, this thing that you use. You know, when we're in investments, we look at benchmarks all the time. We say, okay, what's the S&P doing? And how's my portfolio doing against that? This is our benchmark. As parents, we're going to say my benchmark is what I have done so far. So every move you make, so you start with this, and then every step you take, you say, I wanted my child to be happier. Did I do the step I'm making right now? Does it meet my happy and independent test? And so I will tell you the answer for fear, typically, if you're playing Family Feud, is abuse. I'm afraid someone will take advantage of my child. Okay. Lots of fears. I get lots of fears. The fear pages are long compared to what we think we want. The fear pages get long. But if you know that fear, then you say, again, is what I'm doing today in my planning process going to meet the objectives I've set for happy and independent, and to avoid someone taking advantage of them? or whatever it is. Okay. And then next year I look at it and say, what did I do this year? And did I meet those goals? And maybe your benchmarks will change over time, but if you have benchmarks, you'll be more successful. Okay. What health insurance scenario will occur when I turn 65 and my son will turn 26? Okay. So the health insurance scenario that will occur is you turn 65. I guess the question I will next ask is, you'll turn 65, you might go on Medicare, you might still be on your group health insurance. Okay. So the health insurance that when you turn 65, you will make the decision, I'm still working, I'm going to stay on my health insurance, but let's say you decide to go on Medicare. The day you get off your health insurance at work, your child loses their health coverage. Okay. So you're going to turn 65 and your son will turn 26. Your child, depending upon where you work, will stay on your health insurance if you stay on it. If you drop it, they're off of it. So your child's 26, they will probably be on Medicare, on SSI and Medicaid at the time. If you drop your health insurance and go on health insurance, go on Medicare yourself, okay, because at 65, that's when you can go on Medicare. You don't even have to take Social Security. If you go on Medicare yourself, your son will have no coverage but Medicaid. So what you need to do when you turn 65 is, if you know that's the age you are going to retire, you might start taking your Social Security at 63. Maybe not take your Medicare yet, but take your Social Security at 63 if it makes sense. And then your child will then go into the into the Social Security world. And by the time that you are 65, they would be also eligible for Medicare when you are. Okay. I hope that helps. It's really specific timing. Watch my Retiring for 3 session if you haven't watched that, because I cover a lot of that. Okay, thanks so much for your videos. These have been truly invaluable. Oh, thank you so much. And eye-opening for our family who's relatively new to this journey. Yeah, we're always new to this journey, and their journey keeps changing. I'm very grateful to be here. Sometimes I get sad because I miss my sister, but my son has disabilities, and just talked to him yesterday, and he's struggling through some stuff. But I'm really, really happy to help you guys. I'm building a team behind me so that Protect Tomorrow's continues. I'm now bringing on several people. If anybody knows anybody who is a financial advisor who wants to add to our team, if they're in the Chicago area, that would be great. We are growing exponentially on that side of it, as well as on the special needs side. So we're building our team, and my goal is to come up with new ideas for families, and I'm going to be writing some books. The one thing I have realized is that we as parents keep moving. We keep finding answers. And somebody said to me, well, how did you even start this business to do this? And I said, I didn't even think about it. Every decision I made in my life has been made because I knew in my gut it was the right thing to do. So I know but I always never know when to quit, right? It's easy to go into something. It's hard to know when to stop. And I don't plan to stop, but I do plan to keep finding answers for you guys, and answering your questions and coming up with new ways. So if anybody ever has any better ways that we can keep teaching you, we have the Parent University we do once a month. We're going to keep recording stuff that you can put on your sites. And that's the goal. We're going to try to do short podcasts next year, available to groups, and just things are changing, right? The other thing you should know that changed is when the Secure Act passed this in December of 2020, it made it better to leave retirement monies to a special needs trust and less better to leave it to our other children. So retirement money can go to your spouse, tax deferred, but if it goes to your other children, it's going to be taxed in 10 years. But if it goes to the special needs trust, it's going to be taxed over their lifetime, which is a much better tax. So that's what I hope to do, is keep paying attention to all this stuff that's going on in the government. There is some legislation on the table. I'm paying attention to that, where maybe they're going to allow our children to have more than $2,000 and have $10,000 in their name. Who knows? Children who get married with a disability are significantly penalized. I just talked to somebody else who, the child got married and they lost all their benefits. So my job is going to be trying to keep up with that. And how do I teach you guys and come up with ideas? Somebody said they need processes to track stuff. And how can we do that so that the next generation who are going to step into our shoes will have all the tools they need? So thank you very much for allowing me to join you on your Saturday. And if there's any other questions, otherwise I'm going to sign off and wish you all really well. Any more questions? Okay, I think we're at almost 1 o'clock here in Chicago. So have a great Saturday and the rest of your weekend. And I hope you all learned a lot from this conference. It looked like there were a lot of good sessions. Thank you.